So welcome to today's webinar resident series, Developing the Insanely Productive Dentist Mindset. It is being presented by Dr. Brian Laskin, and we are so grateful he is here with us today. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the Adam Dreyfus, Director of University, Government, and Institutions. Take it away, Adam.
Oh, good morning, Jessica. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I just want to say, first and foremost, happy holidays to everybody. It is that time of year. I know a lot of you travel in from different states and different parts of the country, and some of you from out of the country. Please know that we wish you a very warm holiday season, and welcome you to the New York market or wherever you're calling in from. So first of all, that's number one. Number two, it's December. 6 months you're into your residency program already. I cannot believe how time has flown for me. I hope it's flown for you too. It has been absolutely incredible to be a partner of yours, supportive of you. As I know you've heard me say before, and I'll always say it, NDX, Adam Dreyfus, Jessica Respondak, and all of our vendor partners are here for you today, tomorrow, and for the future. But I really do want to say from the bottom of my heart, from my family to yours, thank you. I know you have choices. I know you have people that you can choose to partner with, and I really do appreciate you partnering with me and NDX. And this series is for you, and I really do appreciate all the feedback that you provide. And we have altered things to provide as round of a series as we can. And with that, we brought in an esteemed guest for today's presentation, who will tell you all about himself. And it's enough about me. I need to turn it over to our guest for this morning. Dr. Brian Laskin, please take it away.
Thank you very much. And I want to mirror what Adam said. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. And I want to just honor the fact that you're here with me today, and very much appreciate you taking your time out of your busy, chaotic schedules to learn about what happens outside of dental school and residency and how to become an insanely productive dentist. And I want to thank NDX Laboratories. I mean, you can probably get the feeling from Jessica and from Adam in their presentation that a company is only as good as the people that are in it. And as I've gotten to know NDX more and their commitment to education, I just say I couldn't be more impressed. And so it's great that you guys are having this experience with NDX right now. And we're going to have a series of a few presentations. And today I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get into discussing what I like to say is 3 steps to become an insanely productive dentist without sacrificing quality, stressing out your team, or working yourselves to death. Now, as you know, I think most of the people on this call are residents, and so you're probably right now honing your skills, but very soon, once you enter the outside of dental school, outside of your residency, you'll probably find out that it's not the dentistry that stresses most dentists out. It's the actual running a business. And even if you're an associate, or if you're a specialist, or if you're not the primary driver of the business, you're still, as default, as a dentist, you're a leader of a team. And that's what I really want to focus on today, is how do you set yourself up to be successful without burning yourself out? Burnout in dentistry is shockingly high. I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into it. But also make sure we're going to have times for questions. So make sure to, as I go through it, drop your questions in the chat, and we can address those as we go along. So a little bit disclosure, I'm a part of several different companies in dentistry. You can read them there. Tooth Apps. My practice is called Lake Minnetonka Dental, an educational platform, Upgrade Dental, Digital Nitrous, Quickly, Evergreen Twice, Voyager Dental, and Dental HQ. And so those are the companies that I'm part of in dentistry. There's one more, Dental Standards Institute, that I forgot to put on there. But I say that because I've hit several aspects of the industry, and also just, you know, as means of disclosure. But my career started off very humbly. My first office was actually at the end of this little strip mall. You can see right there. This is the only picture I have of the office. It was taken from Google because it was so shockingly small and embarrassing. I never took a photo of my own office, which I didn't realize until years later. But Smoky Superette is as disgusting as you would probably expect. And the strip mall was, you know, nothing big. It was 800 square feet. We had 2 operatories where I could do operative work, or one was kind of hygiene and operative, and then one that was so small that you could just fit one person at a time in addition to the patient. And so it's a very, very humble office where we started, but grew to a second location, which I bought another practice, merged my office into it. The practice was actually smaller in revenue, but it was in the 3rd story of a medical center, buried away in this medical center in Minnesota, which is where I am. And the reason why I really acquired that office is, one, my small office was bursting at the seams after about a year, and 2, the dentist that I purchased this practice from was a complete clinical master. So he started the Occlusion Society in Minnesota, the AACD, the Cosmetic Dentistry, the chapter here he started. He took every continuing education and was just a master. And so I figured that my pathway to success in dentistry was going to become a clinical master. And he was sort of my mentor, and he was a fantastic clinical mentor. But about 2 months after I purchased his practice, I had a moment where I felt like this, which I think almost any business owner feels at some point in time, where I didn't know if I was going to make payroll. And it was shocking to me how much money would come into the practice. And then what was even more shocking was how much money was going out of the practice. And I didn't have any clue as to kind of what was going on. Now, I knew that we were very productive, but it's shocking sometimes when you can have a very, very successful business from the perspective of delivering great care, having lots of patients, but then not knowing if you're going to be able to make payroll. So I hired a consultant, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, to kind of help me out and kind of learn the business of dentistry. But over the years, you know, then my practice grew so that now it occupies 8,000 square feet, this entire building. And we grew to 2 locations with 5 general dentists, an oral surgeon, an orthodontist. Now we have an endodontist. And the way that we really scaled the business, and I'll talk a little bit about it as we go through, and throughout this series, we'll talk a little bit about, is through leveraging basically 2 things: technology and teamwork. That was key to the practice. And what I realized after having that moment is that clinical dentistry, the mastery of clinical dentistry that you're learning the skills right now, and again, I'm honored to be here at this moment in your career, is crucial. You have to have clinical excellence. However, that's not enough. That's not, if you're going to be running a practice, or even being an associate in practice. I believe today that there are some leadership skills. There's some aspects of how a practice runs that everybody in the practice needs to be aware of, beyond the obvious and necessary delivery of clinical excellence. And a lot of that also comes down to making our jobs easier, focusing on doing things that make our lives easier. And I became sort of a master of that. So I developed several technologies, from team communication to virtual reality platforms. I've been my offices were featured on covers of magazines, and I sold to one of the largest DSOs, where I was innovation officer for a few years. And so the reason why I'm mentioning this to you is that I have kind of gone through the journey from not knowing anything about the business, and really being scared to make payroll to becoming an insanely productive dentist, having associates who are insanely productive, and having several practices and running the innovation in one of the largest DSOs through some pretty easy levers that hopefully I can impart to you today. And so, I've also sold multiple software platforms. So at this point, I'm not the kind of person that wants to hit a golf ball and then walk after it and then hit it again. So, sort of the point of the journey that I'm in right now. So I want to help as many dentists as I can. And today, hopefully, impart upon some simple mindset shifts. So these are just ways of viewing the practice of dentistry that I think over time will help you become more profitable, deliver better care, at a time when insurance reimbursements are going down and they're not going up. I mean, supplies and inflation are getting out of control. Wages are skyrocketing. Patients' expectations are so much higher than ever before. But I truly believe that this is the best time ever to be a dentist. The technology we have, the pretty much elimination of pain management. 20 some years ago when I got out of dental school, we did not have the anesthetics and management of pain that we do today. If you're a dentist, you can focus exclusively on doing dentistry. However, I do think that these what we're talking about today will still ring true. You can focus exclusively on running practices or running businesses like I do right now, or you can do a blend of both. But while I do believe it's the best time to be a dentist ever, I think it could be the worst time if you ignore the changing environment that we practice in. When I got out of dental school 20 some years ago, things didn't change a whole lot in the first part of my career, but things are changing monthly now, as you all probably know. And so I'm very excited to be talking to you at this moment in your career, because if I believe strongly that if you take these simple mindset shifts to heart, that this will help you throughout your entire career. So we want to become insanely productive, but really what we're talking about is how to do things sanely. Not working more hours, not seeing more patients, or moving to a new city, but how can we, in our practices, whether we're an associate, a resident, whether we're towards the end of our career, how can we become more productive sanely? Because I've been there, especially not early on in my career, the vast majority of my career. I thought that I had to run faster on the treadmill. If I could squeeze in one more patient, if I could do one more procedure, maybe get additional training to do procedure X, Y, or Z, that for me to be more productive, for me to reach my goals, I had to see more and more patients. And as you know, we have a limited amount of time in the day. We all have the same 24 hours a day. So we can only work so much. And for me, I ended up, kind of spinning a bunch of plates. And it almost hurts me to say it. As it happens, I did this for the majority of my career. I just worked harder and harder, faster and faster. And you can see the plates wobbling, and then you just hit a wall, and then you try to regroup and start spinning the plates again. And eventually you'll burn out and you just run out of gas. And I know it's hard to talk about this and when you're in your residency, because you're probably running really hard right now, but hopefully some of these tools will help you, because what I see with a lot of dentists is they work harder and harder. They lose the support of their families. They probably are drinking things they shouldn't be drinking or eating things they shouldn't be eating. And they try to keep turning up the speed on the treadmill to keep things going. And dental burnout is a real problem. Only 4% of dentists today can retire financially free. And that's just shockingly low. I mean, dentists make much more than the average person, but the reason why is because we're running so hard on a treadmill that you see money coming in and you're going, yeah, and then you see money going out, and it's shocking. Even as an associate, if you my associates all the time, even though they're incredibly productive, are asking about what the insurance write-offs are and things. So it's important to recognize that we have to pace ourselves. For dentistry, your career is a marathon, not a sprint. And where you are in your career now, obviously, is not going to be where you will be in a little bit. But I can tell you that every 5 years of my career has had a fundamental shift where my career looks very different than it was the 5 years before. And that wasn't planned all of the time. And it's all been good, but it's been from the mindset shifts that we're talking about today. So what we're talking about today is a different pathway than running on the treadmill and being insanely productive, but also running out of gas. So today we're going to discuss a different path to experience compounding success. That's what it's really about: incremental changes over your career, continuous learning, right? So that as you go forward, every day is incrementally better than the last day. And that's how as I trim back my hours from I worked 5 days a week. You'll hear a little bit about it in a bit, but I worked 5 days a week seeing patients for years and years. As I trim back to 4 days, then 3 days, then 1 day clinically, my production went up every single time. So what that means is that when I was seeing patients 1 day a week, I was more productive than when I was seeing patients 5 days a week. And that is kind of what I'm going to be talking about, because I've had a realization of what's possible if you step back, take a look, and look at things a different way. So just some arbitrary numbers. And I realize that, in residency, that you're probably not, this is ahead for you quite a bit. But if a dentist is doing, let's say, $5,000 in production, I firmly believe that every dentist, or at least 95% of dentists out there, could double their production, right? By doing some simple things that we're talking about today, and this is not about just numbers. This is about the lifestyle you deserve, the wages you can pay your team members. It's the care you provide, as we'll talk about in a little bit. A consultant once said to me, the numbers tell a story. And as you get out and you're seeing patients, the reality of dentistry is that to be able to track what we're doing, the numbers are the best way to track it. If we do, $10,000 versus in production versus $5,000 in production, as long as we're focused on the highest quality care we can deliver, which is paramount, that means we're helping more people, right? And that's our job, in my mind, is we're stewards of the oral health of the population we serve. And if we want to have greater impact, we have to be sort of masters of what we're talking about today. So let's get into it. It's 3 doors that I think the kind of 3 mindset shifts that no matter where you are in your career, obviously this is, I think, going to be way more valuable today at this moment in your career, even though you're not really tracking your production or working with, you're not really leading the team right now. But if you take these to heart, I think that as you grow in your career, these will have exponentially more impact to your career. So these mindset shifts will serve you immensely throughout your entire career. And the first one I'm going to get into sounds very simplistic, but we'll talk about it a little bit, which is working smarter, not harder. So this is a key one, and it becomes cliche, but I think a lot of cliches are cliche for a reason. And if working smarter and what that means. So the first shift that, is kind of like I mentioned with the treadmill. You can't outwork the problem of busyness. Like I said, I worked 5 days a week for the majority of my career seeing patients. I would spend big on external marketing without looking inside the practice. That's a big one right there. I mean, there's so many sort of things that aren't sexy, aren't exciting, but the boring things that work are the things that work, right? Taking care of your patients, internal marketing versus spending money externally, right? trying to train your team yourself, because you're not the expert to your team. Just like, I'm a parent of a couple teenagers. I went from knowing everything to knowing absolutely nothing. So sometimes hiring somebody from outside your team to come in, really, even if they're saying the same things, has massive impact. But if you're always, kind of knocking down the proverbial gophers from like this whack-a-mole game, right? It'll burn you out. And like a professional athlete, the people that win the Super Bowl don't train at 100% all the time. They need rest, relaxation, massages, so that they can be at their best. And working too hard, you will definitely burn yourself out. And this picture is very emotional for me, because this is my family on the first trip that we took that was over a week long. So I hadn't taken off more than 2 days in 12 years when this picture was taken. And I say that because I was holding myself back. Make sure that you take time to recharge, refresh, so that you can have a long career. I'm sure many of you have done the same, and you're in a point in your career where you probably have to kind of like put the pedal to the metal all the time. But when you get out and you're practicing, make sure to take time off so that you can recharge, so that you can be at your best all of the time. And when you're recharging, you can switch from being reactive to be able to respond to what's going on in your career, right? You can plan out and execute a strategy to take you to the next level. And I can tell you the most fundamental things that have happened in my career have happened when I take some time off, reflect, and just kind of plan what's going to happen next. And that doesn't happen if you're in the sort of treadmill of your career all of the time. So how do we take this idea of working smarter, not harder, and put it into your practices, right? Here's how. Something that I realized that I had to do everything. Every patient that came in, I was like, extractions, endo, I was going to do everything that I could, obviously, within the scope of what I could do. So I was to take out, as this shows, like baby teeth. I would see kids. I would do endo. I would do all the procedures that I could. And my schedule was always full. But then I realized that there were a lot of procedures that I lost money that I was doing. I was bad at them, and they stressed me out. And we're talking for decades. I mean, for probably 15 years, I did extractions. And just for me, a lot of it is extractions. And it's very funny for me to say that, because I was just in the Bahamas last week doing charitable dental care all week. And I did more extractions last week than I probably have in the last 10 years. And I didn't get any better at them, right? But it feels weird when you're out in your practice and you're turning away production. And so I didn't. But it was at my own detriment. Once it clicked and I realized, wait a minute, I'm taking half an hour, or I'm taking an hour to extract this tooth that's stressing me out, versus an hour that I could be doing something else. It just took a huge weight off my shoulders, right? And I felt better practicing every day. My team was happier because I wasn't stressed out all the time. And then you don't have to worry about that procedure again. Like, unless you're, in the Bahamas or doing charity work, or if you're where there's an oral surgeon right next to me, if I needed help. But unless you're out in an area where there's no specialists, right? You can actually choose the procedures you do. And for me, that was key, because you can hire associates that like doing things that you don't like to do. There's many people that just are very productive, love, and are very profitable doing extractions. I'm just not that guy, right? And so I would recommend, and maybe it's a little early in your career, but as you get out of residency, and as you're doing more procedures, have a not doing list. The procedures, the responsibilities, the administrative tasks, it's as important to look at what you're not going to do as what you are going to do. Because if you realize, like I said, I took a mini residency to try to get better at doing extractions. And I just never enjoyed it. Was never good at it. And so for me, that should have happened a decade earlier in my career. So an idea is to have what I would call your not doing list. And then also on the other side of the not doing list, the things that you do that I call are FEP, fast, easy, and profitable, right? So for me, I love doing restorative work. So I love doing CAD/CAM dentistry and all on four restorative. And so there were some certain procedures that for me were fast, easy, and profitable. And so then you walk around with less stress, higher revenue, a team that's more motivated, because when we're doing restorations of all on fours, that's a unique procedure that we would do for a long time that just has massive fulfillment and revenue, and just makes my dentistry more consistent, more profitable, more enjoyable to go work at every day. So if you have a list of things that you're sort of trying to wean off, things you're not going to do, and the things that you're going to lean hard into, you can shift your career into being more fun, more profitable, and more fulfilling. So in my case, that went from taking a $200 extraction that would take me an hour at best, hopefully an hour, right, to doing a crown or crowns for thousands of dollars. And it was, procedures that I was doing every day that was smooth, more predictable, higher quality for the patient, and my team enjoyed doing more too. So it actually helped you take on higher value cases, but I'll get into that in a bit later. So tip number one is, instead of trying to use your sort of root strength, your grit, your tenacity to grunt through procedures that you don't like doing once you get out into practice, right? To start strategizing and planning out your career so that you can have more time. And then when you do when you, after you take your breaks and you are in sort of production mode, you can be efficient and create the best quality of care for your patients and the best lifestyle for yourself and your team. So door number two, we're going to talk about people. And I'm excited to talk to you right now, because I think if you talk to any dentist, associate, DSO leader, somebody who works in FQHC or probably in dental schools, the number one issue that I think in dentistry, once you get sort of out for a year and you get your clinical, probably when you get done with your residency, you'll feel very comfortable with most of the aspects of the clinical delivery of care. It's the people, right? It's the people that either going to lift you up or stress you out. And I talked about before, there's, when you talk about like NDX, the people at that laboratory are there to help you, right? And so there's a lot of people in dentistry that are there to support you, your dental instructors, the people at NDX. But whether you're a practice owner or you're an associate, you're going to be responsible for a team, and they're going to be your support system. So how do we leverage the fact that we're working as a care unit to become insanely productive sanely? Well, I think other than the first mistake that I see dentists making that kind of harms their career is, working too hard, not trying to plan things out. They're being reactive, not responding to what's going on in their practices. The second mistake of well-meaning dentists is around people. They feel like that Betty at the front desk is the best person, and that's why we need to have the best people. We have better policies. It's a common theme about hiring people. Then wages go up. You got to attract the best people ever. And while this all sounds great, if you're looking at your practice from a people perspective, you're setting yourself for failure. Here's why. Because you end up needing a team of superheroes that if you want to exceed your goals. And that means that you have to be a super leader, because for you to attract all of these superheroes, right, you have to be a superhero yourself. And while we want to work with the best people we can, it is actually, ironically, backwards. And I'll explain to you in a little bit why. It's putting the cart before the horse. Because there are certain things that we need to do to attract great people that have nothing to do with having great people. It can be impossible to even find people right now. We know that, post-pandemic, I think every lecturer has to use that term, right? But there's just not enough people. And so finding people, training them is difficult. And the blame goes to you, it seems like, if you're not doing a good enough job recruiting, right? Or you're not paying enough. And I can tell you right now, the people who work at the Ritz-Carlton don't get paid much more than people that work at like a Hilton Garden Inn. They just are better at having an environment that great people want to work in, and they select the best people. That's the key. So how do you do that? How do you create an environment that the best people want to work with? And again, this is not if you're just running a practice. This is on your care team. If you're an associate and you have a team, this is how you attract the best team members to work with. So McDonald's just announced that they're coming out with their cosmetics to attract to a younger audience. But we don't want to be McDonald's, obviously. I mean, we want to have the highest quality of care we can deliver. And I would, the example that I bring up with McDonald's is basically, this is incredibly one of the most successful restaurants, and they serve garbage for food, right? So how are they that successful? The reason why McDonald's can serve garbage and still be incredibly successful is that they have the best systems and they have the best focus in the restaurant industry. That's what it comes down to, right? Making the most of the people you have. In dentistry, we are blessed to have just caring, wonderful. I meet thousands and thousands of dentists and tens of thousands of team members. And I mean, the people in dentistry are phenomenal. The dentists, the hygienists, the assistants, front desk specialists, everybody that I meet, the NDX laboratory. I mean, these are phenomenal people that we have to work with. So, but in McDonald's, they don't have those people, right? And not to say that the people that work at McDonald's aren't great, but I would be surprised if they're as nearly as knowledgeable about the restaurant industry as the people in dentistry know about dentistry, right? But yet, McDonald's has 39,198 restaurants in the year 2022, about 200,000 employees, right? Why is that? It's because of the environment that they create. Think about how hard it is to attract somebody to come work at a McDonald's, right? But they still deliver it. They still have people working there and delivering consistently. And the reason why is because McDonald's focuses on eliminating decisions and variability. They automate and use systems to have consistency. And again, we do not want to deliver the McDonald's of dentistry, but what if we focus on eliminating decisions, eliminate variability, automate, and have systems that make people's lives easier, you'll attract the best people. So what does that look like in dentistry? On the left, you can see color-coded sets where we have systematized our kits using AI to make and technology, as we'll talk more in this series a lot about technology and how to leverage technology to accomplish all three of these mindset shifts. And that's a cute core one for me. How do you set up your office? What are the systems and policies that you have so that when an assistant is setting up for a procedure, they know exactly what to do? How many cotton rolls go where? What's each step in the procedure, right? In my practice, that is all mapped out. And I think it should be in every practice because we'll talk about it in a little bit, but ironically, the best people want to have the best systems because they don't want the variability. The best people don't want to sit there and think about, boy, what's the next step in this procedure? Similarly, the best people want to use the best technology. If you've never met a fantastic team member in dentistry, say, boy, I wish we did things like they did in the 1920s in dentistry, right? No, we want to leverage the tools so that we can automate as much as possible, make things as predictable as possible, so that the people in our practices can do what they do best, which is take care of other people, right? And so, and then on the right, this is a burr block. We'll talk about more in a future series, where basically we have mapped out how to prep any tooth consistently, so that you can have higher quality results more predictably, easier, right? The steps that you take. That burr block took me about 10 years to create. And again, incremental improvement. If you look at doing, let's say, a crown preparation for a CAD/CAM restoration, you have two options. You can look at that tooth like a unique problem to solve, that, how am I going to prepare this tooth today? Or you can have a system that you have designed, an imperfect system of how to prepare that tooth. And then each time you do a crown preparation, you think, if I were to do this tooth next time, how can I make it a little bit better? And if you look at it the second way versus the first way, let's say you do 10,000 crown preparations in your first 10 years of career, just for numbers. You will have done 10,000 crown preparations, right? However, if you're the second way, you have learned 10,000 times how to get better at it. And that's how you take a procedure from taking an hour and a half to half an hour over a decade. Because what you'll do is develop a system of your own that makes things faster, better, more predictable. And there's a fallacy that in dentistry, I believe, that faster is lower quality. It is if you don't have it planned out. So developing these systems go across the board, from everywhere, from how you prep a tooth to the technology you use to how you set up your operatory. And in our office, we have checklists for everything. This is an implementation checklist. So for any new system that we're doing in our practice, and if somebody wants an example of like the checklist that we use in my practice, just shoot me a note. But organizational systems, calibration systems, even systems and how you implement systems like we have here, right, are vitally important. So having checklists for everything from hygiene exams, room setups, implementing technology, I think are important, so that everybody knows how you do things in your practice. Because if you plan to, and like Ben Franklin said, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. I believe that very much to be true. And the goal for your team members, and again, and wherever you are in your practice, is, in my mind, to have your system set up so that you can have a temp. This is a temp agency. If you could have a temp come to your practice and just hit the ground running and be 80% as successful as your best team member within an hour, then you have the systems in place. Somebody who is, at McDonald's, they don't have the best and the brightest delivering you your fries. They have the best and the brightest systems that anybody can look at and go, oh, I know exactly what to do. So that's the test. Try to see if you can have a hygienist come in and, without knowing your practice at all, give them the systems, have them look at them for 20 minutes, and they should be able to be 80% as effective as your best employee. And again, like I mentioned before, the ironic thing about this is that's how you attract the superheroes. The dirty little secret is that if you set yourself up to not need to have superheroes, you start attracting them, because they know that that's where A players want to work. And we all feel that way. Like, nobody wants to go into and say, hey, figure it out. I mean, if you're truly great, you want to work with people and systems that are also great and allow you to do what you do best, right? So by focusing on the systems and the policies versus focusing on the people, ironically, you attract the best people, right? And they bring their friends too. So to recap for your notes, the mind shift number 2 is the shift from thinking of needing to have these superheroes in your practices to rely on automation, on software, and on systems to make the people in your practice's lives easier and have things run smoother. So door number three. The third mindset shift is investments. How we invest in our practices. And again, like each one of these, by the way, these are lessons that I've heard from basically being metaphorically punched in the face by doing it wrong. And when it comes to investments, most dentists, myself included, were well-intentioned, think, boy, if we get, you saw my first practice, you saw my second practice, and then you saw my third. And so I thought that as we got more money dropping to the bottom line, for me to grow my practice to get to the next level, this is, I don't know how, kind of a dated reference, but Field of Dreams is an old story, a movie with Kevin Costner where he builds this field in this baseball field in the middle of the field. And, the way that they say it in the movie is if you build it, they will come, right? If you build this, people will come. And in my practice, that meant if I built this big practice that was beautiful, the 8,000 square foot building you saw, to purchase that building, tore out an entire floor. When we started, it was one floor, put all new equipment in. And I felt like if I built this and I put the sign on the outside of the building, that patients would just magically appear, right? So I was having a Fields of Dream moment, just thinking about how patients would love it and how much they would appreciate it. And the very first patient that came into my practice, I'll never forget, because I was obviously excited. I just built this practice. I thought it was beautiful. I thought we had all the best equipment. We just bought a CT scan, right? We give a tour of the practice and the beautiful operatories. And look, we have a new CAD CAM system here, right? And then we go back to the operatory and the patient turned to me. We were doing a number 4 DL. And he said to me, "I hate being here." I'll never forget it. It was like a punch in the gut, right? I'm showing off the beautiful practice, taking 10 minutes and showing him how great it is. And then the first thing he says to me is, "I hate being here." And it's one of those things that I realized that from the patient's perspective, right? Having this big, beautiful office didn't matter as long as there was going to be noise and water and blood and we're going to be drilling in on his tooth, right? And it made me realize, it was the good thing about getting punched in the gut like that is it sometimes opens your eyes to some things. And what it made me realize was that I had spent a lot of money on what I call non-productive items. What that means is things that don't directly address the patient's perspective and how they view things, right? And you could list out any number of things here, from the fountain in the reception area to a new chair that when the old one was functional, and all of those things I think are important. A lot of the non-productive things are important. However, luckily I had a very profitable practice, so it was an inexpensive lesson, frankly, for me. But spending money on this beautiful operatory that you see here, right, doesn't change what goes on in the operatory. And so when that patient who has dental anxiety, which is somewhere between 60 and 80% of adults in the US, walks in there, they still have the same anxiety. So if we can do things to address the patient's perspective, that's the key lesson here. It's vitally important. And one thing that we done for that patient is we actually put them in virtual reality, right? So so when we brought that patient back and we put them into VR, right, that changed his experience, something he could feel. And that VR headset was about 1% of the cost of the CT scan, right? So and he left a 5-star review. So the mindset shift here is to focus on the things that change the patient's perspective or directly increase your production before you spend things on the things that don't increase your production. Okay. So in this case, having VR headset that changes the experience in the operatory, leading to a 5-star review, will get more patients, which will then end up paying for the CT scan. And I mentioned this, and I'll probably talk about it in future lecture series, but in 2022, going into 2023, the number one technology that dentists were looking to put into their practice was 3D printing. And I love 3D printers. I think they do great work, and I know that NDX uses lots of 3D printing, but it's not going to be the most productive for most dental practices. There's probably 2% of dental practices in the United States that the 3D printer should be the next thing, that if they truly looked at what they should be investing in their practices, but yet that was number one on their list. So mindset number 3 is, as you're looking to invest in your career, this isn't just for your practice. If you're going to a CE course, right, you can learn about dental bonding, which probably hasn't changed in 20 years. And frankly, if you read the instructions of your dental bonding agent by some biochemist who spent their entire life developing those instructions for you, the pictograms, right? You can learn about more about 3D bonding, or you can learn about how to deliver dentistry in a way that makes patients less anxious. Which one is going to be more productive? In my mind, the second one, right? Because as long as you're using, you probably know, you've been spending a lot of time learning about 3D bonding, maybe not so much about how to treat patients with dental anxiety. So shifting to delivering dentistry from the patient's perspective so that you can increase your production. And then obviously the other things are great. CT scans and 3D printers and everything else I have in my practice, but it's a matter of what pays for what. So going from non-productive, building the office of your dreams that looks beautiful, into developing things that pay for that. So we went through a lot relatively quickly, but these are, they're deep foundational concepts that we're going to have more actionable in the next in this series that we're doing. And there's a lot to unpack. But number one, set the stage of how this broad principle hits. We had some examples of how I stopped doing extractions, because for me, that procedure was just using strength and tenacity to delivering what I thought was best for the patients, when shifting to, instead of working harder, working smarter, and stopping, having a do not do list and what you want to focus on. Number 2, shifting your perspective from people, having to hire the best people, to developing systems and technology and automation that attract the best people, so you can work together better, more smoothly, and have a highly productive team sanely. Again, this is exactly what this is about. And number 3, going from, buying a CT scan, which is great and everybody needs it, but developing that, or that beautiful operatory, to developing, to investing into things that drive your production, increase the patient experience, so that more people want to get better care more consistently from your practice. So where do we go from here? And this is another broad concept that I'd like to mention. Anytime you go to a CE course, I see a lot of dentists go to take courses and don't do step number 1. So when you're done with taking a course like this, or any course, you have three options. Number 1 is to do nothing. And frankly, that's what most people do. They can say, well, it's great information and I'll get to it. Number 2 is try to apply these things yourself, right? And number 3 is to work with others to help implement it. And I would say that if, number 2 or number 3 are fine, but what I'd like to implore to both to all of you is to seek out continuing education through your entire career. When I just mentioned I was in the Bahamas for last week doing charitable work. And as part of that, we had 2 different leadership series where I learned from other, there was one dentist, but from other people. Later this week, I have a coaching session with one of my coaches. You know, as you're ending your career, your education, I would implore you to keep being engaged with the NDX series. They have phenomenal educators, to keep learning, because it is not about what you've learned so far that's going to be your career. You know, your career is probably going to take many different evolutions throughout the next several years. And I believe strongly that the way to continue is most effectively is through building on your education. So and then staying away from doing number one. We're getting great education and then not doing anything, right? So I'm here to help too. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to help. So thank you very much.
Oh, Dr. Laskin, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your presentation this morning. The information that you shared is quite incredible. And I know that in my conversations with a lot of the residents, they always bring up the business side, right? We always talk about the business aspect of dentistry. And you just hit it right out of the park. Obviously, you've been immersed in it for quite some time now. So I thank you for sharing that knowledge and that information this morning. I always take things away, right, from every presentation, and I sit through lots of them, right? The biggest thing, and this is something that I speak to a lot of people about, dental students, dental residents, and then as people progress into their careers, the number one commodity that they have, number one commodity is their time. And you have to be efficient with your time. So thank you for validating that, because a lot of your conversation today was prioritizing your time and how you're going to maximize that. Dr. Laskin brought up processes and systems. NDX is a product of that. That's what the laboratory survives on. So know that when the laboratory reaches out and says, we need X filled out properly, or Y done, or Z, whatever it might be, it's not to pick on you. It's a process. We want you to be involved in the process, because that process makes you more efficient, which then in turn makes us more efficient, which then makes the patient happier. I love the conversation you brought up about digital dentistry and in-office production. I will be more than happy to engage that conversation with anyone on this call, right? I am a big proponent of it, but what did we go to school for? What is going to be more efficient in your time spent? These are the conversations that myself, NDX, everybody would love to engage with you and choose the right partners. As Dr. Laskin said, if you build it, they will come. It's not always that way. If you build it correctly and you invest in it and you invest the right amount of time, they will come. We are here to support you today, tomorrow, and for the future. Happy holidays to everybody. I hope you enjoyed this time of year. Dr. Laskin, thank you so much for sharing the time with us. Looking forward to our next course in January with you. I thank you again. Everybody, go prep more teeth. We're waiting for you. Have a wonderful day. Speak to you all soon. Stay safe, stay warm, and stay happy. Thank you, everybody.